I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful spring seasonal wreath. I've used willow for the main body of the wreath, and then I've used tete daffodils to adorn it. It's got a lovely pine cone that I found on one of my walks, and I'm going to show you how to make the wreath. I'm going to show you how to encase the daffodils so that they last as long as possible on the wreath. Once the flowers have died back, the bulb will still be fine inside its wrapping, so I'll take those out and I'll plant them outside so that they'll grow next year. There isn't any plastic used in this wreath. I've got some artist floristry wire, and everything else is totally natural biodegradable material. It's fairly straightforward to make, but I think you'll agree it looks rather impressive, and it's a really nice way to celebrate spring. My business Creative with Nature is all about welcoming the different seasons and trying to play a bigger part in the natural cycles of where we live. And I absolutely love wreaths. There's so many different ways that you can make a really lovely wreath. It can be really rustic, it can be quite ornate like this one. You can bring in lots of materials from where you live. So follow me while I make this wreath, and I hope it inspires you to make something of your own. So I'm going to use some willow to make my wreath. I've got here some lovely 6-foot basketry willow. It's lovely and long. Doesn't have any imperfections, lovely to work with. I've also got some daffodils all ready to go. There's no reason why you can't put them on the wreath while they're just about starting to grow. You don't have to wait till they flower. I've got some hemp rope that I'm going to use for the top, to bind it at the top. I've got a small collection of pine cones that I forage on walks. And then I've got some artist floristry wire. This one's quite fine. I've got some thicker pieces in here if I feel like I need them. Got pliers in case I need to fasten anything with the wire and I'm struggling, or if I need to pull anything. And I've got a decent pair of secateurs. Mine open and close like that. They weren't expensive, but they're good, strong secateurs. They're nice and lightweight. They're very sharp. So, to make a wreath, there's lots of different ways that you can make a wreath. It can be really quite rustic and rough, and they look lovely, or it can be quite refined and quite polished. So I'm going to show you quite a refined way of making a wreath. There's 2 different parts of the willow. There's the butt and there's the tip. The way that willow grows, it grows against a stool, a stump at the bottom. It grows like that. So it has a natural belly, it has a natural curve. So we can work with that as we're making a wreath. So, from my small bundle here, I'm looking for my first rod, something that's really quite thick. So none of it's particularly thick, but I'm looking for the thickest willow within the bundle. So this one's nice and chunky. I'm going to bring this across my chest. So I'm right-handed, so I've got the thick end in my right hand. I'm going to bring this across my body, and then I'm going to hold it with my left hand. So I've got the thinner tip end, and I've got all of the butt in. Once I'm happy with the size, I can't go much smaller than that because I need to have enough willow to wrap around the hoop. Once I have it like this, I can make it bigger. Can you see the really straight bit there? That's because that's the strongest part of the willow. So if I press it against my middle, I can make that rounder. So by pressing it against myself, I can make my hoop as small as I want. But I don't want it so small. I want a nice decent size hoop, so I'm going to go for about that big. And then I'm going to weave the rest of the thinner end through, like so. And then I'm going to get another willow rod. Doesn't matter which one, I just don't want it to be thicker than my first one. I'm going to add my second rod so that it's doing exactly the same as the first rod, but just further down the hoop. And I think I'll add 4 altogether. So if I add one here, I'll add one here, and I'll add another one here. If you're not sure where to line them up, I would add it right next to my first one, doing exactly the same thing. So my first thick end, the butt end, is on top of the rest of the hoop. So I'm going to add it in exactly the same place on top, and then I'm going to bring it around the hoop, and I'm going to add it about here. And then I'm going to go all the way to my tip, and I'm going to feed the tip through. If I can keep a nice big arch on my willow, it's much less likely to kink. At this point, the weave is between here and here. That's too loose. I need to make it tighter. So as I get just towards the end there, I'm just going to tweak it, and that'll make it taut. I'm then going to go all the way to my tip, feed it through. And again, when I get to the end little bit, I'm just going to tweak it so it's tighter. Going all the way to my tip again, feeding it through, making it taut. And as I get towards the tip end, I'll naturally be able to do more weaving because the willow will want to do more weaving. So I'm following it really, just keeping it tight as I go along. This now, I can pull it back a little bit, and there's enough room to get another weave in. I want to try and get as much of the thick end in as I can because that's the strongest part of the willow. So I'm going for a third rod. Again, if I'm not sure where to add it, we can line it up with the first one. So it's doing exactly the same, or the second as it happens. It's doing exactly the same thing. I'm going to move the hoop around, and I'm going to add it about there. So you can see my fourth one's going to go about there, so you'll have 4 altogether. It's already done a weave before I set off. It's got an, as I'm looking at it, it's got an over and it has an under. And then I'm going to go all the way to the tip. Feed that through. That first weave is going to be too long between weaves, so I'm going to tweak it as we get towards the end, and then feed it through. I'm doing the same process as I go along. I'm trying my best not to kink the willow. I want it to stay in nice round shape. Okay, final rod. So I'm going to line it up with one of the other weavers. I'm going to move it along the frame out there, and then I'm going to go all the way to my tip and feed it through again. And that last little bit, I'm just going to tweak it. Willow really likes being woven. It particularly likes being woven in 2 circles. So the willow that I'm adding now is following the natural spaces where it should go. And I'm just tweaking it as it's going through. So while it's still thick, I'm just tweaking it so it feels taut. It's not over kind of woven, so it kinks and twists back on itself. Okay, so at this point, I've got a nice tidy little wreath. It's a thin one. I can't weave these anymore, so I'm going to trim them off. Because of the way that I've added these, I now have a front and I have a back. So in order to build my wreath up, I'm now going to weave in the opposite weave direction. All of the material I've added so far is going in the same direction. The easiest way to weave in the opposite direction is to line up one of your butts, and when you add your new butt, add it so it's going in the opposite direction. So this butt here started here and goes in this direction. So by adding my first weaver that's going to go in the opposite direction, if I line it up with any of those butts, so it's coming out in the opposite direction, I'll be weaving in the opposite direction. So feels a little bit stranger to do it this way, but I'm holding the butt in my left hand this time. I'm doing exactly the same thing. So the weave's going to be too loose here to here. That's too big a distance. So I'm tweaking it as it comes through, going all the way to my tip again, feeding it through. And while the willow's thick, just tweak it to keep it nice and taut. You should be able to see straight away with this first rod that it's crossing fibres. It's not following them anymore, it's crossing them. This visually looks really nice on a wreath. It also makes it fill out much quicker. So I'm going to find the rod that I added. So it's this one here. I'm going to move it. So I'm going to add 4 again. So I'm going to move it in a way so it's not right next to the next weave here. It either wants to go there or it wants to go here. So I'm going to try here. Going all the way to the tip and feeding it through. So I've now got 2 in, 1, 2. I can line it up again if I need to. And again, I'm going to turn my wreath around so that I'm adding it further away. I think we might go here this time. And then I just need to add 1 more because I had 4. So I want to add 4 going in this direction. They're not totally equidistant, so this one is a further distance than these 2 are, but that's okay. My next one needs to go here somewhere. They don't have to be perfect. People won't be able to see the actual perfectness or the not quite so perfect. And let you come out there. Okay, so I've got 4 going in the opposite direction. I'm going to trim these down again. I might trim that too. Okay, so at this point I can decide to go in the opposite direction again, or if I think it needs it, I can add another one. I've got quite a big gap here. So I'm just assessing it and thinking, should I add another? And yes, I think I should. So I'm lining it up to one of my last ones. I'm making sure that I'm going in the same weave direction as the layer that I've just done. It's going to bring you out about here. So I'm making sure that my first thick weave comes out in the gap that I could really see, which was here. And then the rest of it will just land wherever it lands. I'm going to do another round going in the other direction again, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, so in order to go back in the opposite weave direction again, I'll find one of the last butts that I wove with, and then I'll line up my weaver so it's going in the opposite direction again. And when I start weaving, it should create a cross against the last layer that I created, rather than going in the same direction. And I'll remember when I get to the end point with it, I just want to tweak it. Oops, go in. So it's a bit tighter. I'm going to pull you through because I want as much in as possible. So straight away you should be able to see with the first one that it's crossing the weave. I'm going to add 4 again and see what that looks like. There are lots of big gaps. There's a big gap here. There's a big gap there. There's a big gap here. So as I'm adding, where I'm thinking about adding my next one, I'll be thinking about, first of all, lining it up with one of the others so that I can see which direction I'm going in. And then just lining it up so that when I do the first weave, it's going to fill up one of those big gaps. So I think this one can go here. I think I might add one more. I can see a big gap here and I can see quite a big gap here. One of the really nice things about this way of making a wreath is you can stop whenever you like. So I'm definitely going to add one that goes across there. I think this side might be slightly thicker than this side. So again, I can have a little look when I'm adding my next rod. But then I might add another layer again going in the opposite direction again. Each time I add a layer, it adds this really nice pattern, but also it makes the wreath thicker. So if you want a good chunky wreath, this is a nice technique to use. I think I'm really happy with it, actually, like that. I don't think I'm going to add any more. They really don't need to be absolutely perfect to each other. Like if I was being really pedantic, I could add another one kind of here because I've got a thinner material here and I've already got the gap there. And again, I've got this gap here, but I think it looks really good as it is. I think it's pretty symmetrical. So I'm going to finish it there. Just trimming it up on the back again. I don't know if you can see, but this one here is sticking out a bit too much. I'm not worried about that because when I add my daffodils, I can make sure that it's placed across that, or that could be the bottom bit, that could be where my pine cone sits. So I'm just going to trim it up along the back. I have these really sweet little tete-a-tete daffodils that I've just very carefully wrapped in moss. And then wrapped in a little bit of floristry wire to keep it together. So I'm going to deconstruct one so I can show you. It smells good, it smells really earthy. So I've got a healthy little daffodil bulb here. I'm using sphagnum moss, which grows abundantly where I live. It's really good for holding moisture. And then I've got a little bit of peat-free compost here. I've got a little piece of artist wire. Have a little think about where I want to place it as well, first of all. Oh, I think that might look really nice there. Okay, so I'm going to get some compost, just very carefully wrap it around the roots. And then I'm going to get some of the sphagnum moss and just carefully place it on top. And then I'm going to get my floristry wire and wrap it around the moss. When it meets itself at the bottom, I'm just going to cross it over like so and take them off in the opposite direction. And I've got just about enough to reach again there, so I'm going to twist them around and then I'll just thread those through the moss somewhere. Now just have a little feel. I think I could add a little bit more, so I might add the original piece that I had. This piece is a little bit thicker, so I'm going to pierce this in on one end first. I'm being careful not to go through the bulb, so I'm going through the moss and not actually through the bulb. There we go. That's really nice. Okay, so that's one prepared. Before I add them to my wreath, I would definitely have just a little play and see where I want them to sit. So I think that looks really sweet, kind of there. They're getting quite long now, these, so I might actually limit myself to two. Maybe I can add one in the centre and do two smaller ones on either side. How would that look? I think that would look very pleasing. Okay, I'm going to do that. These I've been keeping in a basket that's got a plastic liner in them, so it keeps the moisture in really well in there while I'm working with them. Okay, that one's good. This one's good. I need a little bit more moss on that one. And here's another one of those thicker wires. Ooh. That looks good. Okay, so yeah, I'm really happy with that. That looks really sweet. So we'll do the centre one first. Might try a little bit of this thicker wire first. Because of the nature of the wreath, it's really strong and thick. I can weave through the gaps here. Just have it coming through either side like that, and then I can use that to weave onto my ball. Now I think I might do two, and I'll make sure that I go through different gaps so that different parts of the wreath are being put under pressure and it's not all pressure in the same area. Ooh. Threading it through my moss ball. And then back around my wreath somewhere. Just feel it and feel how strong it feels. Yeah, that feels good. That feels nice and strong. Giving it a little wiggle. Feels nice and secure. So we'll get another 2 for the next one. Okay, just check them again. Yeah, that's looking really good. Okay, so 3rd one on the other side. Might get some of my thinner, just wrap it around a little bit, around the whole structure. So that I can set them where I want them to be. Okay, I'm happy with it so far. I think that will look really sweet. I just need to attach a little bit of forestry wire so that they stay where I want them to. Okay, wonderful. I'm really happy with that. So the last thing I need to do is to put some rope across the top so I can hang it from a door or from a wall. So I'm literally just going across the top here, not doing anything overly fancy. And then I've left enough that I can tie it in a knot at the top. So this is the one that I made earlier. Slightly bigger wreath. Done a slightly different combination of how I've attached the daffodils and a very large pine cone at the bottom there. And then this is the one that I've just made now. So slightly smaller wreath. And I've added the daffodils in a slightly different arrangement. The last thing that I would do before I put them outside is get a little spray bottle and just spray the moss. And depending on what the weather's doing, I might give them a little spray each morning and each evening. If it's really wet outside, I might not need to do it at all. It just depends on what the weather's doing. I really like it. So when I put this on the door or on a wall, the daffodils are going to lean towards the light. So at the moment, these are facing this way, they're facing this way. These are kind of trying to turn around to me. They'll turn around. So I'm not too concerned about which direction they're looking in at the moment. I think that's pretty good. I think it's central. I think it looks really pretty. Like I said at the beginning, once these are finished, once they've finished flowering, I will take them out of their little moss balls and I'll plant them outside. And then they'll be happy then in the ground for next year and the year after and the year after. So a lovely little spring celebration wreath. Look beautiful on a wall or a door. They're fine to go outside. You can use the wreath again and again for different things if you like. There's no plastic being used in this at all, so everything eventually will just compost down back into the ground. Let me know how you get on. I hope you really enjoy making your own. See you again soon.